Good morning to everyone. Good morning. I speak before you as a Filipino. I come from the Philippines, but I have Chinese blood. My maternal grandfather was born in China and came to the Philippines as a poor migrant. And I don't know whether fortunately or unfortunately, I am the president of Caritas International, a Catholic confederation of autonomous local caritases. In the Philippines, my home country, disasters are sadly too frequent. The cost is great in terms of lives lost, livelihood ruined, infrastructure destroyed, and dreams shattered. Yet what these communities have in abundance are faith and hope. These virtues drive them to rebuild their lives, rebuild their communities and families from the rubble, from the ruins. Needless to say, love for their families impels them to believe and to hope. They are supported by local civil society, including faith-based organizations, among which Caritas has a leading role. Together, these grassroots organizations play a key part in humanitarian responses to the chaos brought about by natural and human-made disasters. In the Philippines, we get an average of 20 to 22 typhoons a year. And when there are no typhoons, we have earthquakes and volcanic eruptions. Now, these organizations live and work on the ground, and they are the most effective in responding to humanitarian disasters. They are a vital part of the communities before any disaster strikes, and they remain there long after the emergency has passed and the disaster has become a memory. They remain there. They suffer with those who suffer. For this reason, they possess a wealth of knowledge and the breadth of wisdom born out of faith, of hope, and empathy. It is noticeable, however, that the current humanitarian system of donors, sometimes even present in some UN agencies, fails too often to recognize or to engage these local organizations, including faith-based institutions. These agencies tend to direct humanitarian responses from the top, instead of valuing the experience and the practices of those who are already living and working in the communities. And mind you, these faith-based organizations are experts also in the cultures of those communities, how cultures survive and how cultures try to respond to their own miseries. This top-down way of working has been proven neither efficient nor effective. It fails to give due respect to the communities that are being served. Many faith-based organizations propose a global vision where people, especially those in need, are supported in becoming dignified agents of their own destiny, and recognized also as agents of the transformation of the wider society, and not just beneficiaries of some caritative or goodwill action on the part of others. The World Humanitarian Summit is an opportunity to address this concern. We need to improve cooperation in the humanitarian sector by giving national and local organizations support so that they could lead in humanitarian responses using their grassroots experience and wisdom, rather than operate on a one-size-fits-all model. We need to improve partnership and coordination, ensuring that the resources are made available to the grassroots. The Charter for Change sets as goal that 20% of the signatories' humanitarian funding should be passed on to Southern-based NGOs by 2018, and that the NGOs would also be given direct access to donors. But this is the bare minimum, 20%. The bar needs to be much higher. In Caritas, and based on the experience of Caritas, we are almost at 100% level, as it is our vision and mission to organize communities and work with them on the grassroots level. The experience of Caritas affirms that local institutions are the ones that offer extensive networks of critical infrastructure that serve as a source of shelter, care, and education to affected populations. Parishes, village chapels, small faith communities are the best examples of this. After that Typhoon Haiyan in the Philippines, aside from food, shelter, education, makeshift schools, we realized that the children, especially the children, needed emotional and spiritual first aid. After more than a year, many of these children, orphaned, still have nightmares, and that affects their learning abilities. We need to invest in and strengthen these networks so that they could withstand crises. They are not merely supplemental or parallel to public or government service that are often stretched beyond capacity. Donors should direct their resources increasingly to these local efforts that promote grassroots action. We need long-term, multi-sectoral partnerships that prepare communities for disasters and help them recover. We have already seen the effective use of technology, social communications, and cash assistance by local faith organizations. The appropriate use of innovation, however, must keep the affected persons at the center of our focus. The system must be willing to invest in long-term capacity building of these local organizations. Proper training, infrastructure, and systems development can bolster their credibility and efficiency. So these local organizations really need to be helped to be more effective. The type of partnership I am talking about already exists and is flourishing in some places. In Ebola-hit countries, for example, Caritas worked with the World Health Organization to organize safe and dignified burial programs, bringing in the faith perspective. In this year of mercy, burying the dead for Christians is an act of mercy and an affirmation of the dignity of the human person, even in death. Even in death. We saw the promise of a long-term and profound change last year with the adoption of a new global climate agreement in Paris and with the launch of the Sustainable Development Goals in New York, both of which need the vibrant participation of grassroots communities. We cannot ignore the role played by faith in ecological justice and integral human development. This year, the World Humanitarian Summit offers us the chance to transform the structure of power and control in the current humanitarian system and to give local organizations their rightful seat at the table. Let me conclude. Pope Benedict said in his trip to the United Kingdom, Where human lives are concerned, time is always short. Yet, the world has witnessed the vast resources that governments can draw upon to rescue, to save financial institutions deemed too big to fail. Surely, the integral human development of the world's peoples is no less important. Here is an enterprise worthy of the world's attention that is truly too big to fail. The end of quotation from Pope Benedict. Thank you for your patience.
Thank you for those compelling words. Next, we'll hear from Christos Stylianidis, European Commissioner for Humanitarian Aid and Crisis Management. Sorry, Christos.
Dear Professor, this is the problem of the Greek language.
It's wonderful language.
Nevertheless, just very briefly, some points. I would like to re-emphasize in some points which already raised by Archbishop Kristallina and Heinz. And I would like to say as a headline that the impact of conflict has no ethnic or religious color. It hits everyone. Christians, Muslims, Jews, or Buddhists, everyone. This is why I think we are here together in order to overcome more or less traditional difficulties. My first point is labeled joint deliver of faith between cultures and religions. Partnership among different cultures and religions to deliver together is crucial, definitely, especially in conflict situations where access and protection are the main issues. This partnership, as Mr. Nino already said, that is not just about money. Joint delivery of aid is evidence of its neutrality. It's evidence of our impartiality. Also, it can significantly, improve access since the parties of the conflict can become less hostile if they see that the aid is provided by East and West together. This is, I think, is very important. Second point, and maybe is a part of the report, the partnership with private sector. I have an obsession. I'm coming from the private sector, and I know that in these very difficult circumstances, for us, the partnership with private sector, more or less, is a precondition in order to find solutions. A few weeks ago, the pledging conference for Syria in London raised more than 10 billion euros. This was a clear success, and I'm happy that the European Union was the biggest contributor to this pledge. But even this is not enough. Needs keep increasing, and we are always running too much then with funding. I'm a strong advocate of more engagement of the private sector, but to do this, we must have an out-of-the-box innovative approach, since only a win-win arrangement could sustainably work. The private sector can provide much more than money. I'm thinking of innovations in the fields of education, cash vouchers, insurance, and more. And I'm sure that it's very important to provide to private sector specific and concrete incentives and motivations. Maybe Professor know better than all of us this aspect of the partnership with private sector. Third point is about World Humanitarian Summit. I'm putting high hopes in the World Humanitarian Summit in order to boost the effectiveness of our humanitarian systems. But let me be clear, very frank. In the World Humanitarian Summit and in any other humanitarian forum, we need political commitment at the highest level in order to move from words to action. Otherwise, we become more or less like a think tank. Think tanks are highly valuable, but it's not our role. We are political leaders, and our role is to forcefully drive change. I think this is very important, and I'm sure that Stephen and others from UN system focus on this, and I think the political commitments will be one of the aspects of World Humanitarian Summit. And now, regarding the major humanitarian crisis in our current times, Syria, it must be clear for me that the Syria refugee crisis and its consequences in Europe is not local, is not national or regional crisis. It's not European crisis. It's a global one. Therefore, we need global answer to address it. Europe is doing its share with a lot of cost. And many times with a problem of our internal cohesion, sincerely speaking. But global answer means that all the world powers should be part of the solution, financially, politically, diplomatically. And I think maybe it's very important to think out of the box and to see and to discuss regarding a new Marshall Plan in some areas and regions as Africa and Middle East. We need to extend our comprehensive approach. Now, about the latest development and of course after the Munich Agreement. As you know, the Munich Agreement on Syria 10 days ago is giving us a window of opportunity to reach hundreds of thousands of Syrian civilians stranded in besieged and hard-to-reach areas. We committed to do all we can to have humanitarian aid reach those in need within days from the agreement, and we are working very closely with the UN for this goal. I think if we have positive sign from this agreement, it will be very, very important to the global public opinion. We need a positive sign. We need a positive signal to raise awareness of the global public opinion. And my last point, education in emergencies. Education is a shield against radicalization, against forced recruitment, against forced marriage, and it's the foundation for everything else. I think regardless of our very specific duties and obligations, it's very important to focus on education emergencies. And when I was in Bekaa Valley in Al-Zadar, Jordan, I saw that we need education in emergencies inside Syria. And I think this is very important in order to persuade people to stay there with safety zones, of course, but at the same time it's very important for them to respect their dignity and their prospect of their children. Thank you so much.
Wonderful. Thank you very, very much. Now we'll hear from El-Haj Sai, Secretary General of the International Federation of the Red Cross and Red Crescent Society.
Thank you very much, Your Eminencies, Your Highness, Excellencies, colleagues and friends. It's quite heartening to be here this morning to hear a discourse which does contrast really with the discourse out there. I think today, either if we are in the field or then we read about what is happening in the world, the words that are coming more and more are very belligerent ones. It's about force, it's about power, it's about strikes, terror, punishment, and so on. And these are words, that try to transmit, that you have to be real and realistic. Sometimes it is portrayed as a sign of leadership. It's also portrayed as a sign of toughness, as if that is what is required today, but it does not find any solution to the problems, of the people at the end of the day. So it is heartening to hear words that matter, that are about care, support, solidarity, as we heard a number of times this morning, help, peace, tolerance, and humanity and dignity. Dignity, which is very important, to the many people in need today, because many are today in search of what is dearest to them, and that is simply put, their human dignity. And that is well beyond, maybe the supplies, that we provide or the help that we give, but even the way we give the help will either communicate the dignity of people or not. And that is exactly what is contributing to, the words we are using and that portray also the world that we would like to see, which is a world in peace and that is tolerant, in solidarity and mutual support. We're also words that we rarely hear, like moral, like faith, words sometimes that we are even hesitant to use in contrast to the mainstream discourse that is out there. But again, when people lose everything, that is the last clause, that they have to cover themselves in the nudity of poverty, maybe the dignity, and when stripped with everything else, they stay with their faith, to live on. So there is nothing weak, there is nothing not being real or objective, or the sign of not being strong or tough to use those words. But these are more than words. They are more than words because they shape behaviors, they shape attitudes. They also communicate, the kind of a world we want to live in. They also communicate what is acceptable and what is unacceptable at the end of the day. And I think there is a lot of unacceptable that seem to be accepted today. And of course, we can ask ourselves, when and where will we reach the saturation point? When and where is the saturation point? How many more deaths do we need to see? How many more devastation do we need to see? How many more people on the move do we need to see? How many more protracted crises do we need to see? It's not about describing the problems because we live that on a daily basis. It's about what are the solutions at the end of the day that we will be finding. Leadership can be described in many ways, but at the end of the day, it is simply finding solution to the problems of people. If we fail, to do that, I think we will fail, the humanity, and that humanity is really wounded. And each part where if it is wounded, it, wounds and really hurt us all, together. Well, we heard it also from many of us that There are so many who are part of the problem, but also at the same time wanting to be part of the solution. It cannot work, both ways. So money is extremely important, and I'm so glad that your report, Christina, and His Highness, not just only put it in terms of money, you put it in the context, of humanity. You put it in the context of really what matters, and then financing, come into, that. And of course, it has to go hand in hand with how can we reduce the needs. The needs have to be reduced. Mobilizing 20 billion this year and then the year after 25 billion, it may be a good sign of progress in terms of the coverage and generosity. It's a bad sign, on the other hand, because the needs are getting greater and greater by the day. And again, when will be the saturation point? Will we be able to cope? Will we be able, to play, catching up, all the time? We think that access and proximity is extremely important. It is not only geographic, it's social, it is cultural, it's also about acceptance. Acceptance because of the trust we build, acceptance because of the respect we show, acceptance because of being there and being there relevant all the time. All the time, I stress, to accompany people to respond to their needs, of the hour. And that is, again, where we join you by talking about long-term and predictable, funding, the basis of which is the long-term accompaniment of people in supporting them to identify their needs and building on their own resources are the base to respond. But, of course, the needs are getting so big and capacity are being so stretched to the max that coping mechanisms are also being stretched to the max, that additional support is required, additional help is required. Consequence financing on a longer term is required. And we are very pleased, to hear you put it also in that context. So what do we offer? We think that being there all the time and all the time on the side of the population to accompany them is very critical. We are the movement of the Red Cross and Red Crescent. We are present in those 190 countries, 17 million volunteers, on the ground, living and then working, with the communities. When shocks arrive, they'll find us there. When the shocks are over, we are still there, nowhere else to go, because that's where then you belong to. Together, then as a movement, working with the ICRC in the most, difficult places, then trying to respond to this need. That space, however, let us recognize is shrinking by the day, because again, the unacceptable is happening on a daily basis. Ambulances are being shot at, schools are being bombed, and hospitals are being bombed. That is totally unacceptable. I think we are losing also volunteers on the ground, over 50 in Syria, over 10 in Yemen, and we cannot measure the success of our proximity and the relevance, to the population through the number of people we lose on the line of duty. That is totally unacceptable too. So we are very pleased, to see this discussion then happening here, to join, forces and, provide, what we have are the strengths, which is that presence of our movement to partner and then be along your side, to trying again to respond to what is greatest, most important to people, which is recovering their human dignity as a way of restoring humanity. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Powerful words. Now we'll turn to Dr. Mohammed Ashmawi, the Chief Executive Officer of Islamic Relief Worldwide.
Thank you, Professor. Got my name very right. Thank you so much. I thought it's a little bit challenging. No, you're doing a great job. Royal Highness, Eminencies, Excellencies, friends, thank you very much for inviting me. It's a great honor to be here representing Islamic Relief Worldwide, the largest Muslim independent nonprofit in the world. We believe that faith-based organizations, religious people, can really make a difference. They can mend a fractured world that we live in. We've been hearing about that today, all day long. They're chartered by the Lord to help the people, all the people, from their own religion or any other religion, regardless of their religious trajectory. We hear what our prophets said before. Prophet Joseph, the man who saved mankind of his generation several thousand years ago, when he was asked, why don't you ever complete a meal? He said, because if I'm ever full, I will not remember the hunger. Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, said that any group of human beings is like one body. If a part of it is hurt, the entire body is hurt for it. We don't feel that this is happening nowadays. Are we really hurting when we see people burned alive in the 21st century? In my home country, people were burned alive, and I haven't seen a lot of action from the wise people all over the world. We're still meeting those who burned them. We're still treating them as dignitaries. As the respected professor said earlier, it's these governments that are hidden behind all these actions that are happening in the Middle East. We believe that solidarity means that we have to stand together. I appeal to the wise people in the civilized world. Enough is enough. It is inhumane to think that we can ask people to lay on the ground, we put a knife at their throat, and we start slaughtering them, and they're just not going to act. I was so surprised to see Europe surprised that these people are fleeing their countries and now going to Europe. What did you think they're going to happen? You think they're going to just wait there for their turn to come to be slaughtered? It's inhuman. They will have to act, either by going to volunteer with ISIS, or fleeing and taking their own children in a boat in the middle of nowhere, knowing that they may 50% die before they arrive there. If they stay in their countries, they are going to be 100% dead. We have to do something about it. All the wise people in the world, all religious people who feel solidarity need to do something about it. I really believe that we can. I still have hope, because there are good religious people like your good selves who are sitting here, who have hearts and who have mandates chartered by their Lord to do something about it, to care for their fellow human beings. Whether they are from their religion or not does not really matter. It's unethical to even ask the question. Whoever needs help, we should be there to help them. I pray and I appeal again to all of you, whatever we can do to save more lives, every extra life counts. Let's just imagine that it's my own child in Damascus today. We will not take it simply as we are now. Numbers are not, it's just statistics. We're not feeling that it is really human beings that are being buried and slaughtered and the bloodshed every single day nowadays. It's so unfortunate. But I believe that if we can put hand in hand together, we can make a difference. We can prove to the world that religions can unite us, not divide us. We in Islamic Relief are doing that already. We've signed an MOU with the Lutheran World Federation. We're doing projects together everywhere in the world. Newspapers are talking now about Muslims and Christians putting hand in hand to help Buddhists in Nepal, for example. One of the examples that we're very proud of. We're working with Catholics. We're creating a new relationship now, even with Jewish rabbis all over Europe, trying to find areas where we can mutually meet together and understand each other and stand hand in hand in front of the world and say, we can do it together, we can save the world. Thank you very much.
Wonderful. Thank you. Now we'll hear from Ertharin Cousin, Executive Director of the World Food Program.
Thank you very much, Professor Sachs. Excellencies, Your Royal Highness, ladies and gentlemen, I'm very pleased to have this opportunity to speak to you today. Much has been said already about the challenge in front of us. The opportunity that we have, though, as for the World Humanitarian Summit is one to really, as a global community, reaffirm a commitment to humanitarian principles. The reality is that when the Charter for Human Rights, the Charter for the creating the United Nations, when those charters were all developed, we as the people did not include most of the members of the global community. And the reality is that many people around the world today still see humanitarian action as the responsibility of the few. And many even governments believe that these are principles that they did not sign up to. And many, as Jeffrey Sachs has so eloquently and directly pointed out today, would suggest that the few have the responsibility because of the investments that they are making in the challenges that are creating humanitarian response. But if we are to truly achieve a world of peace and prosperity for all, if we are truly to achieve a world that provides an opportunity for the furthest behind to share in the prosperity that we so collectively work to achieve, we must collectively work to achieve, then it will require a commitment from the entire global community to support the humanitarian necessity of action that is required to address the challenges that not only occur as a result of conflict, but also the challenges that occur that result from shocks and crises as identified by Mr. Tagle or Minister Tagle from natural disasters. But the reality, the challenge that we work with is that, yes, the burden that we are seeing today, that we are addressing, whether it's Syria, or South Sudan, Nigeria, Central African Republic, the DRC, is directly related to conflict. The length of time that we are finding ourselves as humanitarian actors working to meet the needs of the most vulnerable has increased dramatically over the last 10 years as a direct relationship of conflict. In fact, when I began my role as executive director of the World Food Program, the majority of our largest actions, our responses, were in climate-affected areas. The Sahel, from the drought. Somalia, from the drought. But now, the majority of our largest actions, our largest response, are directly related to conflict. And they're longer, and they require more resources. But it does not mean that humanitarians should not respond effectively. And so to answer the question that was put to this panel, how do we then, if we are addressing more conflict-related challenges, how do we more effectively respond to the needs of those who are affected, and as such raise the necessary resources to address those challenges? And that is, as many have said, we need to move beyond just the outputs of support. In the terms of WFP, it's beyond just feeding people. It is even during times of conflict, and we're working with those who are displaced, whether internally displaced or refugees, how do we ensure that people have the ability to ultimately feed themselves? How do we invest in agricultural support activities during a period of time of conflict? How do we ensure that we are not just providing education, but school meals that will bring children to school and provide the nourishment that is necessary for that child to stay in school and to learn during the period of conflict or after a crisis. Many of you sitting in this room today have been proponents of providing cash as opposed to direct financial assistance, as opposed to aid in response to crisis. But if we are going to provide cash, we also need to invest in a retail strategy that will ensure that those who have access to cash can actually afford nutritious food. Whether you live in Baltimore or Beirut, the poor pay more for food than anyone else on earth. And so without a retail strategy that ensures that we can reduce the cost of nutritious food, cash does not provide the access to the nutrition that we are working to deliver. So it is not just about the intervention, but it is the programs that we must support to ensure that we are providing the outcome that we want to achieve, and that is an opportunity for those who are affected to move beyond the circumstance of the situation in which they are in to a position where they can move, and the word that is too often used is become more resilient, but in actuality what we are saying is their ability to withstand and overcome and move beyond the challenges of today to provide a better tomorrow. None of these activities will occur without multi-year, multilateral, predictable funding. We have talked about the ideas for new, innovative funding. We've talked about the responsibility of governments. All of these must occur simultaneously. There are no wrong answers for providing new additional funding. Let a million flowers bloom to ensure that we can raise the additional resources that are necessary to achieve these outcomes. And in response to that, we as actors, as humanitarian actors, must perform beyond our mandates to ensure that we are providing, we're using our comparative advantages and strengths and working together with a recognition that no one organization, no one entity alone will provide the appropriate outcome. That we all must bring our tools working together to achieve those outcomes in an efficient and effective manner. Addressing the challenges, not of our institutions, but of those we serve. For their benefit, for their children's benefit. It is only when we come together as a community, including the faith community, with those tools, that we can then truly ensure that we are providing the best answers. Not the cookie cutter answer, but the answer that is context specific, supported by local knowledge to deliver those outcomes. The why behind the urgency of getting this right is simple. Population projections suggest that by 2050, 83% of the people in the world will live in Africa, Asia, and Latin America. And the poorest places where the most vulnerable people live are the areas with populations growing the fastest. Our inability to provide hope and opportunity and a different way forward for those communities means that the pictures that we see that drove the conversations regarding Syria that have resulted in additional funding for organizations like mine are merely the tip of the iceberg. No one will stay, as was stated by previous speakers, where there's no hope or opportunity. But we have the means in our grasp to provide that hope and opportunity, to invest in the prevention activities, as well as in the response and activities and the delivery of services and support that will provide for different outcomes, that will ensure that peace and prosperity is not about us versus them, but about all of us. And that hope for tomorrow is a recognition that we all live on a very small planet. And humanity requires us to acknowledge that we must address the challenges of the least of us in order to ensure the humanity of all of us. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, and very clear and important statement. Next, we'll call His Excellency Dr. Agshin Mediev, the Permanent Observer of the OIC Mission to the European Union in Brussels.
Thank you, Professor. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, at the outset, I would like to express our gratitude to organizers for inviting the Organization of Islamic Cooperation, OIC, to take part in this very important meeting on the role of faith in the coordination of humanitarian assistance. I am honored to represent here His Excellency Iyad Amin Madani, Secretary General of OIC, who could not attend this event for scheduling conflicts. We are convinced that the conclusion of our meeting will allow us to find in our faith the strengthening of our common commitment to alleviate the suffering of people in need. I would also like to thank previous speakers for their valuable interventions and presentations. Mr. Chairman, it's important to acknowledge that faith-based organizations and religious leaders have been carrying out humanitarian activities since their inception. While it has taken some time for a more formal recognition of their role, the international community has finally embraced the critical work that faith-based organizations and religious leaders have been able to carry out, especially in humanitarian situations. Faith-based institutions and religious leaders are uniquely situated to provide assistance in local communities by capitalizing on already existing relationships through religious structures. This meeting comes at a moment when the whole world is facing numerous challenges. The escalation of conflicts mortgages the future of our states, spreading misery and unhappiness within our population. Ethnic and religious intolerance continues to feed hatred, terrorism, and extreme violence in the context of endemic poverty and exclusion. The historical migration crisis underlined our individual and shared necessity of a concerted and coordinated action by the international community in order to contain this plague. This crisis also put in evidence the strength which represents faith to promote love and amity between people, which are the fundamental pillars of a sustainable peace and shared prosperity. Values of Islam, peace, tolerance, dignity, justice, and solidarity constitute the foundations upon which all of OIC's action is based, especially humanitarian assistance in the core of its preoccupations. This action was reinforced since the adoption of the 10-year program of action during the OIC Extraordinary Summit in Jeddah in 2005. This is how, through its 9 offices worldwide, under the leadership of the Department of Humanitarian Affairs, ICHAD, and the support of the Islamic Solidarity Fund, OIC contributes in alleviating the suffering of the Muslim people in need, victims of war and natural disasters, both in member states as well as Muslim minorities living in non-member states. From Sierra Leone to the state of Palestine, through Yemen, Pakistan, Somalia, Afghanistan, Bosnia and Herzegovina, Niger and Indonesia, the OIC provides required humanitarian assistance, builds schools and hospitals, brings new hopes and smiles to thousands of children and orphans. At the same time, some OIC member states such as Jordan, Turkey, Qatar, United Arab Emirates, Saudi Arabia and Lebanon host thousands of refugees fleeing instability and chaos from their country. This irreversible commitment of our organization in favor of humanitarian assistance, strengthened during the 42nd session of the Council of Foreign Ministers of the OIC, held on 22nd and 28 March 2015 in Kuwait, calling for the reinforcement of the cooperation between ICHAD, the international community, and other humanitarian organizations such as OCHA, UNCHR, ICRC, the World Bank, African Union, Arab League, USAID, Australian Aid, European Union, Médecins Sans Frontières. As the second largest intergovernmental international organization after the United Nations, the OIC always managed to take an active part and to contribute to the process of conflict resolution. It imposed itself as a vital partner to the United Nations and other international organizations such as EU, the African Union, or the Arab League in the fight for a world of peace, security, and stability. Religion is teaching people to live in peace and tolerance. This is why OIC always condemned terrorism and extremism in all its forms and manifestations, and called all revealed religions to join efforts in sharing experience to resist to those who act criminally on behalf of religion. OIC is convinced that the interreligious and intercultural dialogue will contribute in fighting fear, in counter-amalgam and stereotypes. In this regard, it's necessary to develop special state educational programs that would bring to people, and especially young generation, truth about the humanistic character of religion. Before I conclude, I would like to note the following. Today, when the world is confronted with such challenges, people must come together to overcome it. And in this process, religion and religious leaders should play a leading role. Contacts among the representatives of different faiths should be regular and systematic. It's necessary to elaborate at these meetings joint approaches to solving urgent problems and to bring them to general public. These meetings should become a sort of permanent forum where representatives of all religions can freely discuss their everyday concerns. At the same time, such kind of meetings provide a unique stage for creative interaction between different religion and religious leaders in favor of common interest. Some existing differences of opinion should not hinder dialogue and cooperation for peace and security people. As it was already mentioned here, religion should unite people, not divide them. People should know that religion could not be evil. Faith is a vehicle of peace and solidarity. We should use it to bring essential assistance to those who need it everywhere they are, in Muslim world, in occupied Palestine, with the Muslim minorities, or elsewhere in the world. We have a collective responsibility, we have to assume it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Very important words about the work of the OIC in this area, and the scope of the activities are remarkable. Now, our final panelist is Justin Byworth of World Vision, the EU representative and executive director.
Thank you, Jeffrey. Excellencies, Your Royal Highness, ladies and gentlemen, it's a truly a privilege to be here today, where we are bringing together humanitarian action and faith. These actually, just on a personal basis, I grew up as the son of an Anglican pastor And I've been working for almost 30 years in humanitarian work, and they're two kind of strands of my life, and it's fantastic to see them come together. And I think it will enrich both the faith communities and the humanitarian community to do this more often. And of course, the subject that we're asked to speak about is exactly that. How can we do more to mobilize it? I'm here representing World Vision. As you said, World Vision was actually born out of the vision of one man who, again, was a pastor who, when he came into contact with humanitarian suffering, first in China in the 40s and then in 1950 in Korea, he opened his Bible and he wrote in the front of the Bible, "Let my heart be broken by the things that break the heart of God." And that motivation, be it faith-based or be it human-based, is, I think, what brings us all together in this. I want to thank the high-level panel, Vice President Georgieva and Your Royal Highness, for a fantastic report. It champions, as you mentioned, the role of local actors. And I think it calls, as part of the grand bargain, for a participation revolution. I like that phrase very much. You can tell I work for an NGO. And I would say that unless the role of faith communities and faith-based organizations are truly affirmed and recognized, as is being done today, but in the documents that come out, the agreements and commitments from the World Humanitarian Summit, unless faith-based organizations and faith communities are truly affirmed and recognized, I think we will not be able to achieve that investment in local actors, that participation revolution. Cardinal Luis Antonio, I think you spoke very powerfully of many of the reasons why that is true. The proximity of faith communities to those. But if you take even just World Vision, from one man's vision to a global organization, we now work serving over 100 million people with 10 million supporters, and just in 2015 alone responded to 74 humanitarian crises in 47 countries, reaching more than 10 million people with over $500 million of assistance. That's just one humanitarian faith-based organization. When I add to that, Mohammed Ashmawi, we know each other well from partnering together, and the work of Caritas, Islamic Relief, and many others, the resources that the faith communities are already giving to humanitarian response needs to be fully recognized. They're huge. But of course, not just the financial resources that some of the bigger international NGOs like ourselves can do, but as we've heard, the first responders in humanitarian crisis are so often within the local communities, those of faith. I remember my first experiences in humanitarian work. I remember very clearly still a hospital in Mauritania, about 900 kilometers from the coast, with a cholera epidemic, and what was happening with the water supply in that hospital being polluted, and working with the Muslim leaders there to ensure safe practice around water. I remember in Bangladesh, in a cyclone in 1991, again another Muslim context, working there for care of the dead, as we heard still sadly more recently in West Africa. I remember in Cambodia working there through the 1990s in the midst of conflict and migration, displaced people, refugees, movements, and again the Buddhist societies and helping Buddhist communities respond in the way that they traditionally did, but they were overwhelmed by the scale of things. So I know from my own personal experience the power of faith communities to respond to this. So I think being here today, we probably all recognize that, but I want to, I guess, to say, so what does that mean for us? Because we all know that, as well as things that should unite us, as you said, the faith should unite us. We all know that whether it be a faith, even within faiths, and between faith-based organizations and other humanitarian organizations, there are always things also that cause misunderstanding and division. And sadly, we know that some of the humanitarian situations in the world today are a direct result of that. And I take the political element of that. Jeffrey, I think you spoke powerfully to that, but there is also a cultural, societal, and sometimes, sadly, religious element of those divisions that is causing it. And although all of us here are very much battling against that, I think that the thing that we need to endorse and to understand and to accept is, what does it take to have collaboration and cooperation? What does it take to bring partnership? I remember a report. I was in the UK for the last few years until moving to Brussels recently, a report commissioned by the British government then on the future of humanitarian assistance. And I remember a particular member of the House of Lords saying that the key capacity for every humanitarian agency needed for the 21st century is the ability to partner. He called it the docking ability, like a spaceship coming together. And I believe that more needs to be done to enable all of us to partner together. This isn't just true between faith-based organizations and others. Commissioner Stylianides spoke powerfully of the role of private sector. In order to really engage the private sector, we need to be better able as humanitarian actors to partner with them. But it is also true between groups of the same faith and between groups of other faiths. Let me give a couple of examples of that tangibly. Cardinal Luis Antonio, you spoke powerfully of the response to the Ebola crisis. World Vision was privileged to partner with Caritas through a model that World Vision has helped develop with a number of other faith-based groups called Channels of Hope. And it's a very practical, pragmatic program model, and there's evidence of this being gathered from many countries now through one organization I'll commend to you, the Joint Learning Initiative, which is gathering evidence about the impact of faith-based organizations in development and humanitarian assistance. But together we were able to train and equip over 1,000 pastors and imams to do exactly what Cardinal said about influencing social behaviors in terms of the management of the dead and safe and dignified burials. But also the other area which is driving conflicts, as Earthwin, you spoke powerfully about, is conflict. And this is where, again, cooperation and understanding is needed like never before. World Vision has been privileged to partner with the Catholic Church and Catholic organizations in, I've got a list of countries here that around peace building and conflict with a common Christian vision for peace and reconciliation. Bosnia and Herzegovina, Burundi, Chad, the DRC, Kenya, Rwanda, the Philippines, where the Cardinal is from, Uganda, and the Central African Republic. And many of those contexts is also not just interdenominational, ecumenical, but also interfaith. So in the Central African Republic, we just in the last year, we started a partnership together with Caritas and Islamic Relief, just north of Bangui, to work with inter-religious platforms and clubs, just down to the level of even children, but with ex-combatants, with displaced people, and to promote these inter-religious platforms in the middle of a context in the Central African Republic, which all of us know is in itself a religious conflict to some extent, as well as a political and cultural one. We see real promise in those interventions, and we see real evidence of that. And I think, again, investments that come out of the World Humanitarian Summit needs to do that. One thing that would help is the understanding, dialogue and understanding to promote faith literacy across all of us, understanding of each other. We all have different languages we use, different references that we use, and sometimes those things cause misunderstanding. I know that some government agencies have actually promoted faith literacy within them. Probably the UN and government, some of the government donors would benefit from that, just as we benefit from those. And I think where misunderstanding can happen is just as there are fears sometimes in the humanitarian community that humanitarian action could be instrumentalized by religious groups for their own religious purposes, we too as faith-based organizations, and I speak on behalf of faith communities as well, have a fear that the faith communities and faith-based organizations will be instrumentalized purely for humanitarian purposes. We need to get past some of these fears and we need to therefore through dialogue, trust and respect, including equipping ourselves to do that, we can come together and then faith can be that resource for hope, that resource that shapes our behaviors, that resource that holds a candle in the darkness, which I think for many of us with humanitarian colleagues working in tough contexts, we know that faith is also a resource day to day. When you get up in the morning and you have to go and implement that program in the place where you had yesterday some tragedy happening. So thank you, ladies and gentlemen, and look forward to the rest of the day.
I want to thank all the panel for wonderful presentations. If I may take 1 minute, I wanted to just add one word more of context of the funding issues. Traditional development assistance, ODA, has had a target of 0.7%. since 1971. We're stuck at 0.3%, and it hardly budges. It fluctuates up and down, but it doesn't increase. In the US, it's about 0.18 of 1%, so it's even less than the average. Traditional development assistance is for long-term investments in health, education, infrastructure, and long-term development. That effort is under tremendous strain, as you can imagine from all of these crises, so I just wanted to add this perspective. This year, many European countries have cut back traditional ODA because they are able to count their refugee payments as part of development assistance. And so there have been deep cuts in even what have been traditionally the stalwart donors of Scandinavia. And budgets of CETA, NORAD, DANITA, and others are way down, way down. Then one should add that the climate financing was supposed to be additional to traditional development assistance, but the donors have effectively rejected that. So they're counting climate financing within ODA and pushing climate financing at the exclusion of basic development financing for health, education, and other areas. Then there was a third alarming development last week, where the DAC, which is the regulatory body of the donors at the OECD, agreed to include several categories of military assistance in ODA. And this is a reclassification for the convenience of the donor countries. Now military training, security training, and other kinds of outlays are going to be counted at the convenience of the donors. So I think one should keep in mind that as humanitarians we're trying to fill a full agenda of development, of humanitarian relief, of climate financing, and we can't let ourselves play one against another, which is what's happening right now in a very, actually very direct and a bit frightening way. I always like to stress there's plenty of money out there. This is a matter not of the lack of funds. Always keep in mind $110 trillion, that's the annual output in the world. So if you divide any of the numbers we're talking by $110 trillion, it's tiny. And if you divide by the $2.5 billion per day of Pentagon spending, or $2 billion a day, it's tiny. $2 billion a day. I tell them, take the weekend off. Give us a balance. So this, I just want to emphasize, we're in a tremendous, tremendous squeeze. And don't fail to understand how much more in this area is already coming out of traditional development financing. I will now turn it back to Marcelo.
We can open for 5-minute discussion, right, of all people present here. There are questions, there are observations. All people can have any. Sorry, please.
Just two reflections on the discussion so far. One, that we have to indeed speak more about dignity, because to survive physically, for none of us is enough. We also want to have our standing with our families, with our community, and I want to thank for bringing that up. Two, on the funding issue, Jeff makes a very prudent point that we need to expand resources across already humanitarian aid is taking a big chunk of official development assistance. It used to be 2%, then it went to 13, 14, 15%. In parts of the world that are in most dramatic permanent crisis, it is 60, 70%. Very little is left to invest in long-term infrastructure, jobs, conditions of development. So we have to expand the totality of what we fund, but expand it not only by thinking of traditional government. Actually, Jeff is right. If we just get to the 0.7%, what a difference it would make. We, however, have to see that there is more in the world than governments. It is the wealthy people, the not very wealthy people who have it in their hearts to give more, the business community that can apply its creativity very productively for the benefit of development, and especially for the most deprived of development opportunities people. So my sense is that we also have to talk about how we can use $1, €1, €1 more effectively. How can we use it so we can address vulnerability to climate change, build resilience to force of natures, and at the same time offer development opportunities and help people to survive? And I think, Jeff, one of the morals we have taken as a panel is that indeed we cannot be fragmented. We have to come together. We have to look at the challenges of the world as one peoples. And that is where I always feel very depressed when I go somewhere and it sounds like competition. How can we possibly be competing when we are facing the enormity of climate change, the biggest challenge of our generation, the enormity of this political instability that you talked about, that the world is getting more complex and yet institutionally ill-equipped to deal with this complexity. And that is where actually these kinds of meetings, when we can talk with each other, not past each other, not at each other, we need more of. Because in the end, it is our generation that bears responsibility for so much wrong that we have done, to put it right and not push it on the shoulders of the next generation.